Well, I think we're like 5 years ahead of schedule. I didn't expect really until like 2030 that the US would be talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's crazy. I guess with technology, whether it's the internet or social media or Bitcoin in this instance, that S-curve adoption, we are starting to go vertical into that. And I guess like one thing I'd like to frame is people are starting to talk about the super cycle. The super cycle means Bitcoin's going up and to the right forever, no pullbacks. I strongly believe Bitcoin's going up and to the right forever. However, that's over time. It's not going to happen overnight. We are going to have pullbacks. Maybe they're smaller than what we've had in the past, 76 to 90% drawdowns. That's something to be able to keep in mind. But I think due to COVID and what happened in 2020 when they doubled the money supply, or since 2013, they printed 80% of the money, which is absolutely insane, absolutely absurd. People are starting to like feel the pinch, and they've had enough time, enough touch points. With any new concept, it takes, like in marketing, 7 to 9 times of hearing something over and over again before you even start to pay attention. People have had like the last 15 years to be able to hear about Bitcoin enough times, but now there's also enough education resources out there to be able to fast track that journey for people. Unfortunately, it's not a 5-minute conversation. People can't just read one book or watch one podcast and they're going to know everything. Like, it'd be lovely if that was the case. But as time goes on and more people are starting to understand it, more and more conversations are happening in real life and like seeping into the culture and going there. And I think it's just that saying, you can't stop an idea whose time has come. We're just at the catalyst.
Welcome to the Bitcoin Source, your go-to podcast for everything Bitcoin. I'm Dawdu, your host for today's deep dive into the world of Bitcoin. Joining us is someone who has been making waves in the space, Sean Clarke. From innovative projects to reshaping his community through Bitcoin, all the way down to podcasting about this digital asset on a daily basis. Sean's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Sean, welcome to the Bitcoin Source. It's a pleasure to have you on here today, brother.
It's such an honor to be on, Dawdu. Thank you so much for such a kind intro. I look forward to diving into a deep conversation.
Let's dive right in, Sean. Everyone sees the success and the moves that you're making today, but I want to take it all the way back. What was your first exposure to Bitcoin? And what was that moment when you thought, this is it? This is for me?
Like, if we go way back, mate, the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin was like 2013 as $96 Australian. And I'm like, I'm going to buy it. I was working on cruise boats in the Great Barrier Reef at that stage. And instead, it went up in smoke and I ended up buying something else, if you can put 2 and 2 together. Next week, I said exactly the same thing. And from there, I didn't buy and I sort of just went off on a tangent. Bitcoin was out of my life for quite a while. I was running these like underwater jet skis up in the Whitsundays, real cool, above and below water. And I just needed like a break. So I took 3 months off and I met this gentleman, really smart guy, created a internet website, sold it for millions and millions of dollars. And a close friend put us in contact together. I ended up staying with him for a little while, helped him set up his new life. He was living in Bali and ended up coming back here after he exited and bought like a big property and helped him sort of set up the first stages of permaculture farm. But he was right into internet stuff. And I didn't really know what he was always doing on the computer, but I moved away and gave him a call and said, mate, I've got $400 in the safe, which I had, like I had $400 cash there. I said, what stock should I invest it in? And he's like, oh man, I don't give my friends investment advice because if it goes bad, then they're no longer friends with me. And I don't want that to happen. I'm like, brother, please, I'm going to flush this $400 into the toilet, like literally, if you don't tell me what to do. It's money I can afford to lose. And he's like, oh, well, I'm not into stocks. I'm into crypto. I'm like, cool. What crypto are you into? And he said, Hello Chain. I'm like, all right, that's great. Put the $400 straight into crypto, into that Hello Chain. I actually got like a 10x out of it in like 2 weeks or something. Like the timing was just so cool. But that like sparks my interest. I'm like, what is this? 400 to 4,000 in the matter of 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I found Bitcoin. I just searched Google, like what is cryptocurrency? Well, Google's like the first cryptocurrency was Bitcoin. I'm like, well, what is Bitcoin? And then I just like really went deep down hard into that path, got the Bitcoin standard really early. This was like September, October 2019. By Christmas, I'd probably read 2 or 3 books. And Bitcoin at that time was like $30,000. So it was like Australian, about 20,000 US. So I started buying it about 300 times more expensive than when I first heard about it. But I just realized like Bitcoin was the store of value. I grasped that really quickly, which was really lucky. And I played around with crypto for a little while, like way too long. If I didn't spend a single second in crypto, I would have been far better off for it, like the mind virus of it. Anyway, came for the greed, found out about Bitcoin, put all the profits into Bitcoin. I was like 10% altcoin, shitcoins, mind virus, distraction, distortion of reality, and then 90% the world's hardest money. And then it didn't take real long to just realize that all of crypto was narrative driven. It's at best a tech place, but like in reality, they're pretty much all the scam. So then just went into Bitcoin, and now, like for a long time, been Bitcoin only. It's the only thing that matters to me. It's the only thing that I'm interested in. So that's sort of like the journey into it. Came for greed to be able to get rich, and then figured out Bitcoin is the separation of money from state. I'm like, that's what I want. Fundamentally, I knew fiat was wrong for my entire life. Used to call dollars monopoly money. When I got my pilot's license, I got $100 bills. And when I do like a milestone, whether it was like my first solo or first navigation exercise, or when I passed my basic aeronautical knowledge and then my pilot's license, I'd write on these $100 bills. Of course, it's not legal, so that never happened. It just really didn't think that fiat money was worth anything. And they laminate it's probably somewhere around here. And then when I found like Bitcoin, separation of money from state, and I heard Nico say that, Nico Moran, simply Bitcoin, I'm like, let's go. This is what I'm in for. And then it's just been thousands of hours ever since diving down this incredible rabbit hole.
People often think that Bitcoin advocates have it all figured out on day one, but I know that that's really the case. What was the learning curve for you like early on? Were there any big mistakes or eye-opening moments that helped shape your approach to Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So like the mainstream media narrative that comes out, there's so much gaslight and Bitcoin's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme, very much similar to what Jamie Dimon, Jamie Dimon, Elizabeth Warren have to say in regards to Bitcoin. So that's like what the media is saying. But from a regulatory point of view, we've got an incredible, I'm not into the ETFs, but as far as ETFs go, the IBTC ETF is pretty cool. You buy Bitcoin, they hold Bitcoin, but you can pay a $500 fee and then you can get that Bitcoin into self-custody. I'm not sure if that's happening in many places in the world or if anywhere in the world. So it's in kind instead of cash crate, which is really, really cool. They've classed it as property over here. So you've got the rule of law surrounding it, which is really good. They are incentivizing people to hold it for a year. If you hold it for less than a year, you'll pay whatever your nominal tax rate is on 100% of the profits. However, if people talk to a financial advisor, it's not financial advice, I'm just saying my experience. But then if you hold it for longer than a year and say you make $100,000 in profit, you're only paying your nominal tax on 50% of the profits, which is really good. So anything over a year, they're incentivizing you to hold it for at least a year, which is really cool. And then another really cool thing that they've allowed us to do is we've got these pension systems, which are called superannuation funds. Basically, if you're an employee, the business will pay money into this account that you can't really touch until you hit retirement. But for people that are willing to take control and responsibility, they can roll that over to a self-managed super fund and they can choose where that money goes. And here they actually allow you to buy Bitcoin in self-custody with your superannuation. You can store the keys yourself, you can hold it yourself, which is really, really incredible for that. So that's sort of the media narrative, and then what the banks are doing, like Commonwealth Bank in particular, which is one of our large four banks, limits you to $10,000 a month, whether it's Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. People like, that's a lot of money. I don't know, if you've been saving your whole life and you want to go into Bitcoin and say you've got $120,000 in a Commonwealth account, it's going to take you a whole year to be able to deploy that capital. Obviously, you can pay ID, you can send it instantly to another bank when you hit that $10,000 limit. Definitely, if anyone in Australia is listening to this, if you've got Commonwealth Bank, have multiple bank accounts, but they're making it really difficult. And there's a couple of other banks I've had experiences now that Bitcoin's around $100,000 just under today, time of recording. But as it started moving, really, ever since Trump got elected and we went from 67,000 and marched up to 100K, people are starting to come in that have been telling about it for years and years and years. I'm like, please just buy one Bitcoin. Like, you've got the cash, you've got the capital, you just need to buy one Bitcoin. So I go to the bank, start moving little bits to be able to test it, move a large part, bank account shut down for 28 hours. Like, okay. They had another bank account with some other cash, tried to send it, bank closed, like couldn't access their funds for 48 hours. This one person, 2 bank accounts that weren't associated with Commonwealth Bank. I've had bank accounts shut down 6 times over the last 18 months. That makes it really difficult. And it feels like the bank is not wanting that money to exit the system, to be able to go into something that is a store of value. So there's sort of like a bit of a dichotomy. The infrastructure's there and it's pretty favorable, but the exit ramps, I call it Operation Choke Point 3.0 here in Australia.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's kind of weird. Like, I thought it was worse than what you told me. Like, they seem to have some perks that, for instance, Canada probably doesn't have. But also on the flip side, like, they're still trying to suppress you from actually just, shoveling in as much as you want. Like, if you're a millionaire and you're just sitting on 50 or 60 grand, with one click of the button in the US, you could just buy as much Bitcoin as you want. And I think that, if you're a real Bitcoiner, like, you kind of have a DCA in your mind to say, like, okay, if the price drops 2%, I'm going to go all in, or you might buy at the high. Some people just have a different kind of style to it. But thank you for that insight, Sean, on just Australia, because my audience is global, and I'm sure people in down under will really appreciate your perspective on that.
No, I appreciate that. The only other thing I'd say on that, and like I touched on it, but just to really make it succinct, is that the rich people are predominantly on the stock market. So those exit ramps, they can just buy like IBTC, pay the $500 fee, and then roll it straight into self-custody. Like, that's very quick. You can do that sort of within a day time frame. But for the millionaire or the average person that's just trying to go through the bank account, like the everyday mum and pop who I care about, what we'd call the pleb, who inflation is affecting the most, it's very difficult for them.
Yeah. So, Sean, how do you break through the noise? So, the Bitcoin space is crowded with opinions, personalities, and a lot of hype right now, especially as the price hovers around this K mark. How do you carve out your own lane for yourself and kind of make a voice that stands out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess number one, there's not too many Australian Bitcoiners. Just full stop. The pre-programming, the propaganda, the gaslighting that's gone on. People are really not paying attention. So I guess being someone here in Australia that has spent the last five years here in thousands of hours, that gives me a unique perspective. And also, like yourself, having a channel, it does give you access to the best and brightest minds within Bitcoin. Pair that with like reading the Bitcoin books, as many Bitcoin books as possible. And then to be able to have those authors on, or those authors have referenced someone like Lawrence Lepard, Greg Foss, Mark Moss, etc., to be able to read a book and then to be able to reach out to those people because we're so connected with X, and then to be able to bring them on, then ask them specific questions. I think that really helps. And then just also like the insatiable desire to consume as much Bitcoin information as possible. Like, I think maybe very few people have read as many Bitcoin books as me. Definitely Preston Pish would be one of them, maybe Lawrence Lepard. But to be able to just have a hunger to seek questions and understand this. Like, when we get into Bitcoin, I didn't spend the last 5 years learning why it's going to succeed. I was trying to seek why it would fail. I've got a fairly large portion of my net wealth within Bitcoin. And that's all I'm trying to do each and every day, is come from that perspective. I guess also reading and being aware that the fiat system is so distorted, it's so corrupt, and we've got this solution and it's benefited my life, and just having authentic, genuine passion that this is the solution for everyone. Like Lawrence Lepard, fix the money, fix the world. We've got it. It's just impossible. And really, if anyone was listening or anyone wasn't listening, I've just got this need to be able to share it because it changed my life. And anyone that's been here for any amount of time, it's changed their life. And I'm sick of people dropping bombs on people, or just like open borders and housing crisis and addiction and homelessness and everything that's going on, because the fiat system is so distorted. We've got the solution. It's sitting right here. Like, it's impossible not to talk about it. And hopefully that passion and purpose comes through.
One thing I really admire about you is your focus on community. Why is that such a central part of your Bitcoin mission? And do you feel like the Bitcoin community as a whole is inclusive enough, or is there still work to be done?
It depends. When you see Bitcoiners in real life, and like Bitcoin conferences get knocked hardcore, you better just stack sats, bro. If you're new to Bitcoin, you haven't been here for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, yeah, just stack as much Bitcoin, get as much Bitcoin as possible. But there comes a point like where every day where I live in this small little town, there's no one that's Bitcoin only really to be able to talk to be able to have a high level conversation that's put in the proof of work, it's got a solid foundation on reality. So by going to those conferences, you can expand your network, you can grow. And the reason why I find them so amazing is because you know that Bitcoiners have put in a certain amount of time to be able to understand what this is. And by understanding what Bitcoin is, they understand the wider world in a certain way, and it gives them a very clear perception of reality. And we may or may not agree. But I just think it's the most important thing. So like, say we fix the money, that's great. But if we fix the money and we've got nobody to be able to share our time with, it's absolutely pointless. Like, for me, I believe the most important things in life are relationships, probably health first, because without health, there's nothing, then relationships, and then wealth. So accumulate a whole lot of wealth with Bitcoin, number go up, technology. But if you've got no health and nobody to be able to share and interact with it, it's pointless. So I think like as we're growing and as this asset matures more and more, which it's doing pretty rapidly, quicker than I thought, to be able to cultivate like-minded people to be able to live in this new world, this parallel economy, I think it's imperative.
100%. And, I think to follow up on that, Sean, there's this really close wealth gap in a lot of these marginalized communities. And when I talk about marginalized communities, I'm not even necessarily talking about race. I think it has transcended that. I think that communities that are marginalized now are the people that are still on fiat. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to be marginalized people, and they don't even really realize that because they're so entrenched in it, whether it's tied in real estate or tied in their 401ks, their retirement. It's like their whole life has been encompassed around the petrodollar or the Australian dollar or whatever, wherever they live, right? The euro. And I think that the things that you're doing with your podcast, your voice on Twitter, on X, is super, super pertinent to having people really understand that this is a paradigm shifting technology. This isn't just a bunch of crazy Bitcoiners thinking about number go up. So when you said that, it really resonated with me, and I hope it resonates with my audience to say, like, look, this is a one in a lifetime chance to really not only change the trajectory of who you are as a person financially, but it's going to reverberate for generations that we can't even foresee right now. And I think that it's super important and imperative that people really on board, get off of zero, and try to get as much Bitcoin as they can as quickly as possible.
Brother, amen to that, man. That's why we're here. That's 100% why we're here. And there's another question that you threw in just before that I didn't answer. Like, are we accommodating of these marginalized communities? Not on X. And that's, I guess, where I was going with conferences. When you're at a conference, everyone's very accepting. But when you get like the hardcore toxic Bitcoin maximalist keyboard warriors at home that are not showing their face and they don't have a real name and stuff, they can be pretty vicious. Like I went down the carnivore journey and stuff and tried that, and I eat that majority. But say, for example, if I want to try something else, people like come and attack and like it's only meat or whatever. And to an extent, I do it too. I don't like tofu. I think it's garbage. That's my perspective. If people want to eat it like that, that's fine. But when it comes to X, I might be like, tofu is garbage. Not saying that I think it's my perspective. I'm just saying like so blatant, and that can push people away. So that's like the vegan community if Bitcoin and carnivore starts to get tied together, or it's like this strong alpha dominating male side of things. That's going to push people away that are more feminine or just wired differently. And there's 8 billion people in the world. None of us are the same. None of us. Well, like every single person's different. We're all unique, incredible individuals. And then we get into like rabbit holes, and part of it's the algorithm pushing us down like a certain path. It can like really like push away those group of people. But Bitcoin's not designed for that. People be like, oh, that's gay or something. Like, stop that shit. It makes no sense. What's someone's sexual preference got to do with buying the world's hardest money? This is freedom technology. This is here to be able to unite. It's the government that wants to divide and conquer. We've got the system. So I do have a problem with that on X, and I want to be able to be part of that voice that says, like, enough is enough. These people already have a hard time, like, in whatever marginalized community, or even just like retirees, like you were saying, they believe in the dollar. Even people that believe in the gold, if you look at it over the last 3 years, it's lost 72% of its value priced in Bitcoin. And we're pushing them away because it's technology and it's hard for them to understand instead of just taking the time. This is why it's of benefit, instead of just like pushing our beliefs onto people. We can have our beliefs and we can believe in them strongly, but that doesn't mean other people have to either.
100. And one thing I do want to say is that it's really nice to see the evolution of certain hardcore Bitcoin maxis. And I'll give a perfect example. Fetsky, who's a good friend of mine, he was
Loves
well,
Svetsky.
yeah, he was well known, and you know, because you've been in this space, to be the real bad boy of X when it came to just, if you're not a Bitcoiner, you don't believe in certain things, like you're gonna get the shit end of the stick. And the last interview I had with him, I asked him that question, and he pretty much told me that he has evolved past that, where he doesn't really have the time because he's kind of laser focused now on just building in the Bitcoin ecosystem and making products or services better for people, instead of just kind of like rage quitting on Twitter about why you should be a Bitcoiner, why you should not, do certain things in the space. And it's always beautiful to see that side of a Bitcoiner where, yes, they're maximalist, they might have been crazy or not really, open to certain people's narratives or decisions, but you can see over the time frame that you can see that they actually progressed and evolved into what we ultimately all want to be, which is an open and inclusive person beyond just being a Bitcoiner.
Dude, I absolutely love it.
Bitcoin is more than just a technology. It's become a cultural movement. You see it in music, in art, and even in streetwear. What's your take on Bitcoin's influence on modern culture? Is this just the beginning?
Yeah, for sure. Like Bitcoin's 16 years old now. Time of filming again, about $97,000. We've already broken over $100,000. And I believe that Bitcoin spent like the last 15, 16 years getting ready for the world, going through different proposals, implementations, making sure all the infrastructure, that Lightning was built as a medium of exchange, that there are businesses, there have been people advocating for it, getting point of sale terminals rolled out. People like Bit Refills, there's a shameless plug, no affiliate link or anything with them. But there's like so many companies and people in the space now, they've taken the time to be able to create like enough rails for people. And we see like each cycle as the price comes up, it brings people in, but we're getting to a point, well, I think we're like 5 years ahead of schedule. I didn't expect really until like 2030 that the US would be talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's crazy. I guess with technology, whether it's the internet or social media or Bitcoin in this instance, that S-curve adoption, we are starting to go vertical into that. And I guess like one thing I'd like to frame is people are starting to talk about the super cycle. The super cycle means Bitcoin's going up and to the right forever, no pullbacks. I strongly believe Bitcoin's going up and to the right forever. However, that's over time. It's not going to happen overnight. We are going to have pullbacks. Maybe they're smaller than what we've had in the past, 76 to 90% drawdowns. That's something to be able to keep in mind. But I think due to COVID and what happened in 2020 when they doubled the money supply, or since 2013, they printed 80% of the money, which is absolutely insane, absolutely absurd. People are starting to like feel the pinch, and they've had enough time, enough touch points. With any new concept, it takes, like in marketing, 7 to 9 times of hearing something over and over again before you even start to pay attention. People have had like the last 15 years to be able to hear about Bitcoin enough times, but now there's also enough education resources out there to be able to fast track that journey for people. Unfortunately, it's not a 5-minute conversation. People can't just read one book or watch one podcast and they're going to know everything. Like, it'd be lovely if that was the case. But as time goes on and more people are starting to understand it, more and more conversations are happening in real life and like seeping into the culture and going there. And I think it's just that saying, you can't stop an idea whose time has come. We're just at the catalyst. The market cap's big enough for Wall Street to be able to take it seriously. The market cap's big enough for nation states to be able to take it seriously. If we're still at $500 billion, the US couldn't really go in and buy Bitcoin without it absolutely going crazy and pump it so high, and then it would have dumped so much. Like the higher our market cap is and the higher Bitcoin's price is, the better it is for everyone, the more stable it is for everyone. And like whether they own coins or not, I guess the opportunity is to buy Bitcoin before we're at 1 million, because we're going to 1 million and then we're going to 10 million. But I just think there's enough time where people are starting to realize that it's just math, number go up technology. That's what Bitcoin is. And it's exciting. And it's, you know, as one rapper starts to talk about it, like there's an Australian hip hop artist here called Cursor, like many years ago, he's like, I'm still buying Bitcoin or still stacking Bitcoin or whatever. And then hasn't said anything about it for years. But now you've got rappers, and you had a rapper on the other day. Super dope podcast, bro. And he's talking about Bitcoin. And then somebody else will be listening to his music and they're like, what is this guy? He's talking about like this better money, Bitcoin. I keep hearing about Bitcoin. He talks about, and then he starts putting out tracks or whatever. And then, I don't know, life's a meme. And just people like really like the music, the culture, everything around it. And I believe, and I'm only coming from my perspective, I'm sick of war. I'm sick of inflation, whether it's electricity prices, food prices, the interest rates being so high, like they haven't dropped them here in Australia at all. The system's stuffed up. There's a better system. It's awesome. It's just that time where people are like fed up, had enough. They're like sick and tired of being sick and tired. So it's just like a switch, and it's happening quicker and quicker and quicker.
For sure. And even to kind of elaborate and expound a little bit more on that, Sean, I think it's super important that we talk about the business side of things because, like, for instance, when I first started this podcast, the first thing people would tell me in the ecosystem is you need proof of work. You need to show the world that you're actually entrenched in this. You have notable guests or you've done something in the space that's big, right? And I've known you've been involved in a lot of notable projects and ventures. What was the biggest lesson that you learned about building in the Bitcoin space?
Really, the only thing that I've built in the Bitcoin space is the YouTube channel, and then I had a online merch store, and I was doing beef jerky. We've got a business outside of Bitcoin. Unfortunately, like I put the jerky out in the Bitcoin community, the carnivore Bitcoin community, when I really started loving it, I just got too busy with what we're doing, so I've passed that off and sold my shares to my business partner. But what I really noticed within that, both the channel and say like as a company building or pushing out a physical product, for example, specifically on the jerky, is it had to be the highest quality jerky. Truly, it's the best jerky in Australia. It's absolutely amazing. I eat a lot of jerky. It was the best. The branding had to be good. The packaging had to be good. Sending it out on time needed to be good. And ultimately, that's why I had to step away, because I just couldn't fulfill the orders in a timely manner. And also what I noticed is like it was costing us so much. There's Michelin star chefs preparing this jerky made in a like multi-award winning restaurant. So obviously it came with a higher price tag attached and a smaller profit margin. But Bitcoiners, when they see proof of work and they see quality and you're consistent with that proof of work and that quality, they'll get behind you and they'll trade like their hard-earned Satoshis, their Bitcoin, for your proof of work. And that's what I'd encourage anyone to do, whether it's like in the Bitcoin space or you're building a business in fiat land, to be able to provide value. That's the whole point of a business, is to be able to provide value to society. The more value you can provide to the more amount of people, the most amount of people, you're going to get compensated for that. And then it's like, where do you store that? So with the jerky, little bit in Bitcoin, but it was definitely like a fiat business just to be able to pay for the staff and the restaurant and the product itself. Whereas with what we're doing now, yes, we're like working in fiat land, making the world a better place. And I won't dive into it on this podcast. We're simply running out of time, and I'll make an announcement with my wife. But then you can store that capital, that proof of work, into the world's hardest asset. That's really what I'm focused on, because we've got an opportunity. We can still buy Bitcoin with fiat. I don't think that's always going to be the case. And the fiat world's pretty messed up. The more value, and if we can start to change it towards Bitcoin ethos and then stack Bitcoin along the way, when Bitcoin continues to grow, it's like a very easy switch, like you're already aligned.
Yeah, most definitely. That's a definite different perspective that I think a lot of people in this ecosystem are ultimately yearning for, right? Like, how do you stay true to the ethos of Bitcoin and not get like deviated? For example, a lot of the altcoins are going crazy right now because once you're a real Bitcoiner, you understand that all the other alternative coins trail Bitcoin when it goes up.
Of
So
course.
the XRP guys are going crazy, the Ethereum guys are going crazy. And I've always wanted to know, like, what makes you stay true to this decentralized ethos and not get distracted by all the shit coins that you see kind of blowing up right now?
Brother, I was at the gym this morning, and my personal trainer, really good guy. You know, I've been pushing him to get Bitcoin, more Bitcoin, Bitcoin only. Anyway, he's like, man, XRP, I should have bought XRP. I'm like, dude, like, don't even start. I've simply got a different purpose. I'm truly here for freedom technology, the separation of money from state. Anyone backing XRP, and XRP in particular, is advocating for central bank digital currencies, for a system for the banks to be able to stay in control, for a system that's ultimately going to control people. I don't fucking care. I just don't give a shit how much it goes up. If it's a technology, a tool that can ultimately be used against the human population, I'm just not interested. And then for like everything else that's complete garbage, I went down that rabbit hole early in the start, and it took months and months and months, or even a couple of years, to be able to remove that narrative, the distortion of reality out of it. Because they've got CEOs or they've got companies behind them. They have pre-minds. They change the rules all the time. You can study it as much as humanly possible, get everything right, make an investment, you're informed, you got your money in there, and they just change the rules. Like, what are you meant to do? What are you meant to do? I just don't have the time, the capacity, the desire to be able to do it. And I guess, you know, people say, oh, Bitcoin has got lucky. After a cycle, like, get into Bitcoin, spend 4 years in Bitcoin. And after that time, you already understand that you just keep buying Bitcoin, or you sell fiat to buy the best money in the world. And you hang around, and you're just really not interested. Like, after Bitcoin accumulates to a certain amount, it's just ones and zeros on a screen. It doesn't really matter what the dollar figure is. And I think the reason I'm not interested is I'm not a gambler. I'm not an investor. I just want to provide as much value to society, and then to be able to save my time in it. And I don't want to have any distractions for it. Like, yes, some people are going to get insanely wealthy out of altcoins. No doubt about it. But the percentage of people that do that, maybe 1%, 2%, 3% at the very most. Some other people will do okay. But 90% of people are going to get absolutely destroyed with it. And that's that game. That's how that game plays out to its natural conclusion. It's just not a game that I want to play.
100%. I had to agree with that, Sean. And I just wanted to hear your perspective on that because there's so much noise around social media in regards to this. And I feel like this cycle, the Bitcoiners have really been taking their foot off the gas on the altcoiners this for some reason. Like, I mean, there's definitely people out there that are going crazy on them, but I feel like this barrage of XRP, Ethereum stuff is just like insane. Like, there's people saying like the XRP is going to 10,000 a coin, and we're like, do you know
Well,
what
the
the market
flipping,
cap?
bro.
It's crazy. Like
They're
10,000 a coin?
whack.
Are you crazy? You know, it's just like one of those things where it's like, you know, and you know, if I try to orange pill people now, it was easier a year ago because they just wanted to know about Bitcoin. But now it's like, well, what do you think about XRP? And it's like, we've been through this already, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we're going to keep going through. Unfortunately, people are greedy. And that's why, you know, when you asked me at the start, I understand people are going to gamble. That's like people that are driven to gamble or speculate or to be able to try time the market. People are just realistically going to do that. Like, do it, have fun, but just try limit. Bitcoin's the money. This is the revolution. It's the greatest invention in human history ever. Full stop, period. they're the facts. If it's 90% Bitcoin and then you go out on the risk curve, so be it. After a couple of years, you probably realize, I should have just been Bitcoin. But everyone's got their own journeys. Like, whatever. But I don't think we should actually take our foot off the brake and let people know that everything apart from Bitcoin, it's going to zero against Bitcoin over time, and it's all a scam. Have fun staying poor, people.
All right, Sean, we're going to switch it up with a little fun. This is the Bitcoin Source lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. You ready?
Let's go.
Okay, first thing you bought with Bitcoin.
Probably some artwork or a book.
Your go-to Bitcoin wallet.
Hot wallet, Aqua, really liking that at the moment. Both cold storage foundation for beginning people. Cold card's definitely the best in my opinion.
Biggest Bitcoin myth you want to debunk.
That is bad for the environment.
Bullish or bearish for the next 12 months?
Bullish for the rest of our lives, brother. It's going up forever, man.
If you could orange pill one person in the world, who would it be?
My dad.
Nice. Okay, that's it. That was dope. I really appreciate that, and I hope your dad watches this so he can kind of like hear that and that resonates with him.
It took me about 4 years with my mother, and been working on my father. But we'll see what's possible. Everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. Like yourself, myself. We understand Bitcoin more so than like anyone that's watching this. Most people understand Bitcoin more than 99% of the population, and it's frustrating when people so close to us don't. You just want to shake and be like, come on, like just take a couple of 1,000 hours from me, download it, get it, like hurry up. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter how close they are. Everyone needs to go on that own journey, and everyone's going to get it at the price they deserve. It's bittersweet.
100%. And Sean, this has been incredible. Thank you for sharing your story, your insights, and your vision with us. Before we wrap up, let people know where they can find you, follow your work, or support what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. G'day Bitcoin, GDAY. G'day in Australia means good day. I think it's always a good day to be in Bitcoin. So G'day Bitcoin. And then on X at Sean, SEAN, Clarke, CLARKE 9. They're the two main places. But yeah, definitely come over, hit subscribe on the channel, turn on the notification. We'll get yourself on Dawdu as well, probably just after Christmas. So everyone look forward to that one. But brother, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Likewise, thank you, Sean. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning into the Bitcoin Source. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode. Keep stacking those Satoshis, stay curious, and we'll see you next time. This is Dawdu signing off. Thank you.